everybody, it's Angie at Angie's Place. I hope you've had a very good holiday, good Christmas, good New Year's. Let me know what you've been up to. I was busy, and when I wasn't busy, I was in a lot of pain. Actually, I was doing both pain and busy. But either way, doesn't matter, it was worth it. It's for the children. So, tonight we're going to be going over Matthew out of the New Source, New Testament. And you can follow along in your Bible if you'd like to. It is Matthew 26, 27, and 28. So we're going to finish up Matthew. Now remember, we've been talking about, Jesus has been talking how you get into heaven. We found out that not everybody's going to be in heaven. Some of us are going to be here on earth. It's going to be a new earth, but it's still going to be on earth. It's going to be a new earth. I think I just said that. Either way. Sorry about that. What else have we learned? We've learned that the disciples are the ones who are going to judge us, and that we are going through the end time things. So that's what we've found out. And obviously that Jesus came here to enhance the laws. He added one of his own, which is to love everybody. And if you love everybody, it kind of takes care of the rest of them. My husband's being funny. And so before I get started reading on our Matthew journey, if you would do me a favor, hit the subscribe button down there, and you won't have to miss anything. And if you hit the like button, you'll spread it all around. Sorry, he's being silly. Okay. So, like, subscribe. Okay, let's go. Alrighty. It's really not that long, I don't think. I think it's a pretty short one. I know it's deceptive because I said 3 chapters, but the 3rd chapter is really not very long. After Jesus finished all these sayings, he said to the disciples, "You know that the Passover is in 2 days, and the human being is to be handed over to be crucified." The chief priests and elders of the people assembled at the chief priest's palace. His name was Caiaphas. They plotted to arrest Jesus by some deception and then to kill him. However, they figured, we better not do it during the feast in case it causes a riot. When Jesus was in Bethany at Simon the leper's house, a woman turned up carrying an alabaster flask of very expensive perfumed oil. She poured the perfumed oil on Jesus' head while he was reclining at the dinner table. When his disciples saw it, they were indignant. "What a waste," they muttered. "This perfumed oil could have been sold for such and such a price, such and such an amount, given to the beggars." But when Jesus realized what was going on, he says, "Why upset this lady? She's done a good turn to me. You always have beggars around, but you don't always have me with you. This lady was pouring this perfumed oil on my body for my burial. Indeed, what she has done will be talked about in memory throughout the entire world, where the good news is proclaimed," and that she is. Then one of the 12, by name of Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priest. "What are you willing to give me if I hand Jesus over to you?" he inquired. They agreed to pay him 30 pieces of silver. So from that moment on, Judas kept an eye open for an opportunity to betray Jesus. On the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the disciples asked Jesus, "Where would you like us to prepare the Passover meal for you?" He replied, "Go to the city to so-and-so and tell him, the teacher says, my time is near. I am to keep the Passover at your house with my disciples." So the disciples did as Jesus had directed them, and they prepared the Passover meal. When evening came, Jesus reclined at the table with the 12. While they were eating, he said, "One of you is going to betray me." They became very upset. Each and every one of them kept saying to him, "I am not the one, am I?" One of you has shared the meal with me will betray me, he answered. What's been written about the human being will happen to him for sure. But woe betides the person who betrays the human being. That person would have been better off if he'd never been born. Judas, the one who was going to betray him, said, Rabbi, it's not me, is it? You said it, Jesus said. While they were eating, Jesus picked up some bread, and after blessing it, broke it into many pieces. He gave it to the disciples and said, Take it, eat it, this is my body. He picked up the wine cup and expressed thankfulness. He gave it to them and said, Drink from it, all of you. This is my blood which seals the covenant. My blood shed to cancel the sins of many people. I will not drink this produce of the vine from now until the day I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. After they had sung a festive praise song, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Then Jesus said, All of you will reject me because of what I do tonight, as the scriptures say. I will strike the shepherd, and all the sheep will be scattered. But after I have been raised, I will go ahead of you to Galilee. Peter insisted, Even if we all reject you because of what you do, I will never reject you. Let me tell you that tonight, before the rooster crows, you will deny that you know me 3 times. Jesus responded, No way, Peter exclaimed. Even if I have to die with you, I will not deny you. All the disciples said the same thing. Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane. He said to the disciples, Sit down here while I go off and pray over there. He took Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee along with him, and he started to get sad and very distressed. Then he said to them, My soul is extremely, deathly sad. Please stay and keep watch with me. Then he went a little further on and fell on his face and prayed, Father, if it's possible, let the suffering be taken away from me. But it's not what I want that counts, but what you want. Then he went to the disciples and found they were asleep. He said to Peter, What? You couldn't even keep watch with me for 1 hour? Keep watch and pray so that you may be spared trying times. The spirit is eager, but the human nature is weak. Again, the 2nd time he went away and prayed, Father, if there's no other way for this to happen without me suffering, then let your purpose be done. He came and found them asleep again, as their eyelids were heavy. He left them and went away again and prayed a 3rd time, saying the same words. Then he went over to his disciples and said, Are you going to sleep and rest indefinitely? This is now the time that the human being is betrayed into sinners' hands. Get up, let's go. My betrayer is near. While he was speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived with a large crowd from the chief priests and elders of the people, carrying swords and clubs. His betrayer had arranged this sign, Whomever I kiss, he's the one. Arrest him. He went straight up to Jesus and said, Hello, Rabbi, and kissed him warmly. Jesus said, Friend, what are you here for? Then they grabbed Jesus and arrested him. One of the people with Jesus drew his sword, struck the slave servant of the chief priest, and cut off his ear. Put away your sword, Jesus exclaimed. People who take up the sword are killed by the sword. Hasn't it occurred to you that I can pray right now to my Father, and he will provide me with more than 12 army divisions of each of 600 messengers? But then how would the scriptures be fulfilled? It has to happen like this. Then Jesus said to the crowds, You've come to arrest me with swords and clubs, as if I'm a robber. I was sitting with you day after day, teaching in the temple, and you didn't arrest me. But this whole thing was done to fulfill the prophetic writings. At that point, all the disciples left him and ran away. Then the people who'd arrested Jesus took him off to Caiaphas, the chief priest, to the assembly of the Bible scholars and the elders. Peter was following Jesus at a distance to the chief priest's courtyard. He went inside and sat with attendants to see how it would turn out. The chief priest and the whole council tried to find some false evidence against Jesus so they could put him to death. They couldn't find any, even though many false witnesses came forward. At last came forward and said, "This man, I am able to destroy the temple of God and build it in 3 days." The chief priest got up and asked Jesus, "Aren't you going to answer these allegations?" Jesus kept silent. The chief priest said to him, "I put you under oath by the living God to tell us whether you are the anointed one, the Son of God." "You said it," Jesus replied. "And what's more, after this you will see the human being sitting at the right hand of the power and coming in the clouds of the sky." Then the chief priest ripped his shirt as a formal act of judgment and exclaimed, "He is blasphemed. We don't need any more witnesses. Now you've heard the blasphemy. What do you think?" "He deserves the death penalty," they answered. Then they spat in his face and beat him up, and the others slapped him around. "Prophesy to us, anointed one." "Who's the one who hit you?" they taunted. Peter sat outside the courtyard. A servant girl went over to him and remarked, "You're with Jesus of Galilee." But he denied it in front of everyone. "I haven't got a clue who you're talking about," he said. When he'd gone out the gateway, another girl saw him and said to the bystanders, "He was with Jesus of Nazareth." But he denied it again with an oath, "I don't know that person." A little later, the people who were standing around came and said to Peter, "Surely you're one of them. Come on, your dialect gives you away." So Peter started calling down curses and swearing oaths. "I don't know this person." And at that very point, a rooster crowed. Then Peter remembered Jesus' words, "Before the rooster crows, you will deny that you know me 3 times." He went away and cried bitterly. He had to live with that. They all had to live with. I can't even imagine what they had to go through. The guilt of knowing that they had denied him would have been very hard to deal with. Okay, chapter 27. And dawn arrived, and all the chief priests and elders of the people formed a plan to have Jesus put to death. When they tied him up and took him off to the Pilate, the governor, when Judas, his betrayer, saw that Jesus had been condemned, he had the change of heart. He tried to return the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders. "I have sinned by betraying innocent blood," he told them. "Could we care less?" they replied. "That's your business." Judas threw down the pieces of silver in the temple and went away and hanged himself. The chief priest took the silver pieces and said, "It isn't legal to put them in the treasury. It's blood money." They consulted with each other and brought the potter's field as a burial for foreigners with the silver pieces. This is the reason it was given the name the Field of Blood, which it has been to this very day. Thus the words spoken by Jeremiah the prophet were fulfilled, and they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price they set on him, the amount the Israelites had agreed to pay, and used the money for the potter's field, as the Lord instructed me. Jesus stood in front of the governor. The governor asked, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "You said it," Jesus answered. The whole time he was being accused of the chief priests and elders, he made no reply. Then Pilate asked, "Aren't you listening to all the evidence they're bringing against you?" But Jesus didn't say a thing in response, and the governor was amazed. At the time of the feast, the governor was accused to be releasing to the crowd their choice of prisoner. At that time, they had a notorious prisoner called Barabbas. So when they assembled, Pilate said to them, "Which one do you want me to release to you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called the Anointed One?" He realized that they had handed Jesus over because they were jealous of him. While Pilate was sitting in the court, his wife sent a message to him. "Don't have anything to do with a righteous person. I've experienced a lot in a dream today about him." The chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowds to ask for Barabbas. And as this would result in Jesus being executed, "Which of the two do you want me to release?" the governor asked. "Barabbas," they exclaimed. Pilate asked, "Then what should I do with Jesus, who is called the Anointed One?" "Crucify him," the crowd answered. "Why, what's he done wrong?" Pilate asked. They all called out again, even louder, "Crucify him." When Pilate saw that it was no use and a riot was about to start, he got some water, washed his hands in front of the crowd. "I am innocent of the blood of this person," he said. "That's your business." All the people answered, "We'll take the blame. So will our children." Then he released Barabbas, and after he had Jesus beaten with a Roman whip of leather straps embedded with metal, designed to rip off the flesh, he sent him off to be crucified. I believe that is a cat-nine tail, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, abuse. If any of you ever have a chance, the Passion was actually very good, but make sure you bring tissues. It was a good name for the movie. It really was. And it gives you the perspective of what his family went through too. Because you have to think Mary watched all of this happen to him. And being, and Joseph too, and being the parents, it had to have been very hard. Very, very hard. The governor's soldiers took Jesus into the governor's residence and gathered the whole company of 600 soldiers around him. They stripped him and put scarlet robe on him. After they had woven a crown out of thorns, and they put it on his head and put a stick in his right hand, they knelt down in front of him and made fun of him, saying, "Greetings, King of Jews." They spat on him and kept hitting him over the head with sticks. After they made fun of him, they took the robe off, put his clothes back on, and took him away to be crucified. On their way out, they found a person from Cyrene called Simon. They conscripted him to carry Jesus' cross. When they arrived at the place by the name of Golgotha, which means place of skull, they gave Jesus a drink of wine mixed with a painkiller. After he tasted it, he wouldn't drink it. When they crucified him, they divided his clothes among them by casting lots. Then they sat down and kept watch. Above his head, they placed the charge, which read, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." Then the two robbers were crucified with him, the one on his right side and another on his left. The people who went past abused him, shaking their heads. They said, "Hey, you're supposed to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days. So save yourself if you're the Son of God. Get down from that cross." In the same way, the chief priests, along with the Bible scholars and the elders, also mocked. "He saved others, but he can't save himself. If he's the King of Israel, he can come down from the cross right now, and then we'll believe him. He trusted God, so God can rescue him now if he really, really wants to. After all, he did say, 'I am the Son of God.'" Even the robbers who were crucified with him taunted him in the same way. From midday until 3 p.m., darkness covered all of Israel. About 3 p.m., Jesus called out loudly, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you abandoned me?" When some of the bystanders heard this, they exclaimed, "He's calling for Elijah." Immediately one of them ran and got a sponge and filled it with the soldier's issue of wine vinegar and put it on a stick and offered it to him to drink. The rest said, "Leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah will save him." Jesus cried again with a loud voice and gave up the spirit. And the veil of the temple that separated the Holy of Holies from the holy place was torn in two from the top to bottom, and the earth quaked, and the rocks split. The graves were opened, and many of the bodies of the people devoted to God who had died were raised up. They came out of their graves, and after Jesus' resurrection, and went into the sacred city and appeared to many. Now when the Roman officers in charge of 100 men and those with him who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and everything that happened, they were extremely frightened. "This person truly was the Son of God," they exclaimed. Now here's one thing that you don't hear about in certain things, in the stories that they tell you. You don't hear about the earthquake and the graves opening up and the temple splitting in two. They don't show any of that. They usually don't even tell any of that, 'cause, that's actually the first time I've heard that too. And that is truly amazing. I mean, God uses everything for a purpose. And he used an earthquake. And being back there in that time, that would have been really, really scary. And I lost my train of thought on that, so I guess it wasn't important. Or I would have said it, right? So, anyway, that was very interesting. So we learned one more thing that came. I'm going to tell you something at the end of this too, so please stay tuned. Please let me know what you're thinking down below if you want to add to the story. If maybe you're catching something that maybe I'm missing, please comment down below. Many women were watching from a distance. They were the women who had followed Jesus from Galilee and had been materially providing for him. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Joseph, the mother of Zebedee's son. When early evening came, a rich person from Arimathea named Joseph arrived. He too had become a disciple of Jesus. Jesus went to Pilate to request Jesus' body. As a result, Pilate ordered the body to be handed over to him. When Joseph had taken the body, he wrapped it in a clean piece of fine linen and put it in his new tomb, which he had hewn out of the rock. He rolled a large stone against the door of the tomb and left, and Mary Magdalene was there, and the other Mary sitting in front of the tomb. On the next day, the day after the day of preparation, the chief priests and the Pharisees went as a group to Pilate. They said, "Sir, we remembered that when he was still alive, that the impostor said, 'I am to rise after 3 days.' So please order that the tomb be secured until the 3rd day, in case his disciples come and steal him, and tell the people he has risen among the dead. Then this case of fraud will be worse than the first." "You may have guards," Pilate replied. "Off you go. Make it secure as you can." They went away and sealed the stone and secured the tomb by posting guards. After the Sabbath, as the first day of the week began to dawn, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to see the tomb. There was a major earthquake. A messenger of the Lord came down from heaven. He rolled back the stone and sat on it. His face was like lightning, and his clothing as white as snow. The guards shook him in fear and laid like corpses. The messenger said to the women, "There's no need to be afraid. I know that you're looking for Jesus who was crucified. He's not here. He has risen, as he said he would. See for yourself the place where the Lord lay. Go off quickly and tell his disciples that he has risen from among the dead. In fact, he is going ahead of you to Galilee. You'll see him there. Take note, I have told you." They left the tomb quickly, fearful, yet very happy, and ran to report to his disciples. Jesus met them and said hello. They went to him and held his feet and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Don't be afraid. Go and tell the fellow believers, go to Galilee, and they'll see me there." While they were on their way, some of the guards went into the city and reported to the chief priests everything that had happened. After they had a meeting with the elders and consulted each other, they gave a large sum of money to the soldiers with the instructions, "Tell them his disciples stole him into the night while we were asleep. And if the governor gets to hear about it, we'll persuade him and we'll cover for you." So they took the money and did as they were told. And this story is spread among the Jews to this very day. The 11 disciples went away to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had directed them. When they saw him and worshipped him, however, some doubted. Jesus said to them, "All authority has been given to me in heaven and upon the earth. So then, off you go. Make disciples of all the nations. Baptize them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teach them to hold fast to everything that I have commanded you. I am always with you until the completion of age." So, until all of this is over, until the end times, he is with us. He will always be with us. And there are things that happen. It is truly amazing things that happen. When they say prayer can move mountains, it really can. And where there's more than one person, I should say 2 or more people gathered in his name, he will be there. But he is always with us. And that was a hard one to read tonight. But in the same respect, we learned some new things tonight too. And that is always nice. There is one thing there's another thing I'd like to add. Cephas, however you say his name, the one we mentioned a little bit earlier in chapter 26. Anyway, you will find him. They found his son's tomb, and then they found his tomb. His son's tomb was before his, and they found his remains, and from there they found his remains, and his remains actually had nails from the cross of Jesus. Okay, we're going to assume they are, because the way they were laid out, if I remember right. But they used to put things in the tomb to, I guess, ward off evil spirits and help them go into heaven, or into the good dimension, because there is 7 dimensions of heaven, which we know there's, and I believe either heaven's in the last one or the first one, not sure, but its time is faster than ours. 1,000 years of ours, or slower, or worse. I think ours is much slower. I could have that backwards. I'll have to think. I always get confused on that part, but either we're in a slower time or they're in a slower time. So there's obviously, between the dimension, there is definitely different times. Now you also have to remember, when they found Coppius, that they originally were looking in the wrong age, because back then they lived a lot longer than they did today. So, being that as it may, but they did find him. And so if you look that up on the internet, I'm sure you'll find it. Just put in his name, and and you should be able to find them, or the documentary that it was under. Anyway, they've got a lot of good things in that series, and I can't for the life of remember what series it was, because it was probably about 4 years ago when I watched it. But anyway, like I said, if you look up his name, it will probably, the video will probably will come up. But it was an interesting find. Very, very nice find anyway. So, tell me what you thought of all that. We got through with Matthew. We learned a lot from Matthew. And you have to remember, these are their accounts. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. So their accounts of what they witnessed. So they're alike. Their stories are alike. And they're going to be slightly different. Just like an eyewitness story today. But for the most part, they're all alike. Where it counts, they are alike. Anyway. So different people, another interesting thing about it is there have been different people that have actually went into this trying to disprove that Jesus ever existed, and or that the Bible is wrong. And all of them, every single one of them, ended up believing in God. So that's another interesting thing too. So with that, I will say goodnight. Have a blessed day, guys. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.